Oh man, so we got heat advisory until like the end of Friday, I think, here in sunny Indiana, where it's 100 degrees and feels like 100 and well, right now the heat index values are between 100 and 107. And I know this is supposed to be evening edition, but the sun's going to be up until like 9 something tonight. Like 9:16 p.m. is the sunset for here at this latitude.
Oh yeah, we're getting farther and farther into the summer.
Summer just started.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking of the days ending at like 6. How far we've come. I
Yeah.
don't know I don't know much worse than the Boston 4:30 sundowns. Those were brutal.
Oh man.
I
You'd
mean,
think
I've
that
never seen Alaska, but
I've been told that there are periods of time during the year in Alaska where the sun barely goes down, if it at all, and then there are parts where it is gone for like almost 4 weeks. I can't imagine what it's like above. I don't know. I can't remember what the latitude line is, where it's like, yeah, you're guaranteed to have no sunlight for like extended period of time. Like I'm sure that causes some kind of you know maybe lightweight, but definitely very real like psychological trauma. I know that if I if I miss several days in a row and for whatever reason I only get like a few hours of daylight. That's one of those like you start to feel real weird, like disconnected from everything. But then sometimes once a year I go camping, where I spend almost a week just not around technology, and there's significant portions of that time that's spent in the dark, but it's all outside.
yeah, I'm sure that's a pretty stark contrast. Um, no matter what time of year, though,
Yeah.
just because we get so much light pollution in the city, like even in small towns, the light pollution's bad, and then on top of that, the ambient electronic pollution, like you, you can tell when people have gone to sleep and they're not using as many devices, just there's not as much of a hum in the air. And it's like
I'm surrounded by devices. Like everywhere I look, there's something that's on.
right, but I mean, in terms of like things, things like a refrigerator or an air conditioner or um, a television that's like turned all the way up. There's certain things where you don't live in an apartment building where it's like it definitely there are different levels of activity that you can just hear at an ambient rate, depending, if your windows are open or if your windows are closed. The internal versus the external. Um, it it goes in waves in such a way that if you didn't pay attention to it, you wouldn't think that there was some regularity or anything. But it's like you could it's not even like one person's schedule either, and it's like
You know, I've actually traditionally always enjoyed, I preferred recording at night because for whatever reason it was not just because there was less activity, but it seemed like the act of recording itself was easier. Like I wasn't fighting for electricity or something.
yeah, that's part of it too.
I remember every time I could like you could tell when somebody fired up a microwave, and it didn't matter like if they were in the house or then like next door or two doors down. Like there's just something about a microwave running that just makes everything kind of dirty.
or even, you know, I think the most obvious one is when internet starts running slower at peak during peak
Oh
hours.
yeah,
That's like you don't have to hear it or hear
you
anybody
can
doing it
feel
to
it.
know it's happening,
Yeah,
right?
you can feel it in your eyes. Oh, the internet's slow right now. There must be a ton of people looking at this website.
You know, but I think it's it's more obvious during the summertime in that I think just more windows open, people are out more. Um, but we need AC. Like needing AC or fans is one of the big deals. I think where um, it's way more audible than a furnace in general or like heat sources.
So speaking of AC, I watched this video. This person in England was talking about the heat dome, and they were talking about how like nobody in England has air conditioning, and all of the houses are designed to retain heat, and they're like they don't have the same culture of fans, I guess, or something like that. And it was the reason that people were like basically roasting themselves in their homes. It's because you can't open the window because the air outside is just as horrible as it is inside, and no, no air conditioning. But you know, like I think my dad asked me, he's like, "Wait, don't they have air conditioners? Can't you just go buy like a window unit?" And that's actually a good question because window units exist. How much is a window unit?
I mean, it's not even the cost of the window unit. Their energy is just so much more expensive.
Oh yeah,
It's not even possible. Like if they had a window unit, they wouldn't be able to use it. Our like our ex, our energy being so cheap is why the rest of the world has heat problems.
well, yeah. I mean, just running an air conditioner. Go outside and put your head next to the a window unit, and it's definitely hotter above it than you know, not above it. Even though it's pretty horrible out. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Like for it's like $139 at Walmart or Sam's Club. It looks like that doesn't seem prohibitively expensive, but let's see how much is electricity. Let's see here. Generally higher. 2.8 times higher. Yeah, that's definitely like a hey, don't run the aircon.
Yeah, they don't really have the luxury, pun intended, of using AC. And their houses aren't high ceiling, waste of space. So it's not like, I mean, I think part of it though is like everybody in England isn't at home all the time. So that they have public transit, so they're out more, and that's why they're hot, and that's why they're visible being hot. Like
Yeah.
people are just in their homes being hot, nobody would care, but they're out smelling, being European, not using deodorant. so it's a problem. Which, Brits aren't really known for their hygiene in the first place. So I think that's why people are probably more, the heat is no fun, but it's way worse when people smell bad.
Oh yeah, especially when they, odor is one of those things that's like once it gets a hold of you, it's hard to escape. Sometimes it moves into like a shoe or a hat or any article of clothing that has polyester, and it's like I'm gonna stay here forever, guys. Especially like, okay, so I remember this very distinct smell of salty sweat from high school. Like every time I've encountered like people who are like really active. It's not just high school. I mean, like at like the gym, like the hyper or SRSC. Like I would always, there's always like somebody who's like really working out, and they've got this really distinct like, it's like clean smelling, but it's also like this salty sweat smell. It's very, you've encountered it. I'm sure you have. You've been to a gym before many times, and it's one of those things that like I don't I only ever notice it when I'm in like a hot, sweaty environment. But this stuff right now, it's causing something completely different. Like it's like supercharges whatever, bacteria are on me at the moment. It's real crazy. Like this there's it's almost like a, not sure what it is actually. It's like in my in my facial hair, I can end up with this kind of like a saline, salt rich goo from evaporating sweat, and I'm pretty sure it's like a combination of like sweat and bacteria and dirt, whatever else is like getting caught in the hair itself. I'm sure that this has been a thing like all my life, and I just didn't notice it. Like so many things in life.
Well, I guess I've gone through different phases where I know what you're saying. Like, if I haven't showered and then I go into heat, the smell is like untethered.
Yeah.
um, I don't know how to put it, but then that's where again, so the salt, it's weird. Like, I think the salt is just pure sweat, and like you're saying, then once bacteria festers, then it becomes something else. But that's if I smell salt, I generally will shower. But if I don't smell salt, then that's where I'm like, okay, I haven't actually sweat. So it's like that's the most basic type of sweat. And then I think anything else on top of that is either like bacteria or diet. And then that's where onions come through, fucking deli meats come through, weed comes through when you eat it, um, coffee comes through. What else comes through? Like bad oils come through. Um, yeah, because I mean, even down to like I know that the smell will come through in that I've been in a gym working out and like the teacher was like, "Who smells like weed?" And I hadn't smoked for like 2 days, but I was the only person in that place that smoked. It was like coming out of my pores, and it was like it was strong, and so that's where I'm like, it when you sweat, people can smell what is in your diet or like what is in your system if it's strong enough. And then that's where like, people who do meth, they'll smell like fucking tar or it's like a ammonia or something. Like I've been in gas stations and been around people that smelled like chemicals and they look like they're on meth. And so I associate those two things. But it's like without failure, if somebody looks a certain way, almost 9 times out of 10, they're going to smell like ammonia or something. And that's where I'm like, I think the people who smoke meth, it comes out of their pores. So,
Well, you just reminded me like the whole like process of using a sauna is supposed to drive toxins and other stuff out of the body, and uh, among other cardiac benefits. I wonder how much of our like metabolic processes are actually improved by being in a like an extra humid environment, and also properly hydrated such that one would release all of that stuff, and then how much of that stuff just is expressed as some kind of odor. We can't like see stuff coming out in our set. Oh, there's that hamburger I ate last week, and those are the fries. And it doesn't work like that. It'd be really weird.
it kind of does though.
I mean,
It kind of
I know it
does.
does, but
Like
we can't see it. We can only smell it.
you can, I mean, in the sense of like, you can see it when it passes.
I mean, I guess it's not like a stock ticker that's like coming out in a neat linear fashion. It's like,
I mean, but if your diet is healthy, then you can see it when it passes. Is what I'm saying. Like
oh yeah, no, I can
there's
get that.
there's markers, and it's like, especially if you eat a lot of greens, like your stool is green when you eat enough greens. Like the I think people, for something that literally every person does, we don't use our shit to become healthy enough or at all in the sense of that's how that's you can't see inside except when it comes out, and
It's,
that's
it's
like
interesting.
that's the only thing that you can tell unless you go get like a colonoscopy or some
no,
shit.
it's interesting you mentioned that. Actually, my one of my buddies, his wife is a nurse, and like her first thing to look at is like what's the stool quality, and she told me that one time, and I thought, I was like, huh, interesting.
Well,
Are the stools regular? Are they weird? But that no, it's true though. It's like that's a good indicator. Like if it's coming out foamy, there's something wrong. Something very wrong.
right, it's the same with piss too, in
Yeah.
that like you can get foamy piss if you, I think it's like too much protein or something, or like you're not processing protein or
It's
something.
it's
There's
a
like
apparently
different.
it's a underlying kidney problem.
Right, yes, I mean it's definitely it's definitely a problem, but there's ways that it can happen where it's not like your kidneys aren't failing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, if you consume 400 grams of protein and you're like 130 pounds, your piss might be foamy
Let's see. Yeah.
afterwards.
Proteinuria, kidney disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, preeclampsia, dehydration. Oh, whew, to be so dehydrated that comes out foamy. That's really bad. None of those other. Well, I guess like diarrhea would be kind of like in route to dehydration.
Well, dehydration's fucked up because it's like you can get diarrhea from being dehydrated. You can get constipation from being dehydrated. It's like I wish the body would make up its fucking mind and not do the fucking exact opposite symptoms for the same problem. Like
Oh, you're dehydrated? Don't drink too much water because it'll make you puke.
right. Oh, you drank so much water that now your body's overloaded and you're gonna start throwing up and your body's not even gonna retain water.
Oh, it gets even worse when you're like you're hyperhydrated or something like that, it starts to leach the sodium out of your bones
Hmm. Well, and
and
that's
your
why.
muscles, and then you get all sorts of crazy cramps because the ion pumps don't work right. Your sodium and potassium pumps don't work right, and then your cellular functions start to break down.
This is why we're not supposed to drink. I think it's reverse osmosis water,
Yeah.
and then there's one other one.
Oh, distilled water. It can,
Yes, distilled water.
yeah,
Yeah, we're not supposed to drink those because it fucking strips our body of nutrients,
yeah.
which is like,
That's crazy.
god damn it. It's like, man, I thought it was just fucking not salt water. Now I gotta not there's like three types of water I can't drink.
Oh, there's a fourth one actually. It's
Shit.
pure pH water, like pH neutral water. It's caustic. It'll cause
Mm.
organic tissue just to kind of erode itself into or dissolve. It's nasty stuff. It'll dissolve
I
steel.
mean, that doesn't sound like some shit. Yeah, that doesn't sound like something that people are trying to sell and scam.
Oh no, you can't. This stuff has to be produced in a lab,
I'm
and
talking about the stuff that's on the shelf.
yeah,
There's
no,
like
no,
three types of water
yeah,
that are like on the shelf that we can buy labeled as drinking water that we're not actually supposed to drink.
yeah, yeah. Distilled water is definitely one of them.
Yeah, which is like, the reverse osmosis water is what they use at Starbucks. And it's like, it tastes fucking amazing, but god damn it, it's not good for us. um, but in all that, it the base like salt smell, it feels like that's just our body letting us know that like everything's fine.
Yeah, maybe.
Like,
Hey, this is all I've got to get rid of, guys. You're doing great. Like,
yeah, because again, it's like, you know,
yeah, no, that like
everybody.
that.
I mean, okay, not everybody. Let me rephrase that. People with certain genes get that smell, so it's there, and it has some biological meaning, or there is some biological use for it. So I think that's where it must, for oneself, it must be like, oh, here's everything good, and then for other people, it's like, oh, something bad is around if somebody's got
I bet there's
like
I bet there would be like if we go back far enough, there'd be some kind of like tribal component of shared external bacterial biome, and so that maybe that's where the whole like people they smell their own kind of thing comes from. So
right, but even further in terms of like a certain type of nervousness is going to smell a certain type of way, and if we smell a certain type of nervousness,
oh,
like
I see what you're saying.
we're going to be put off by it, and our guard's going to go up because somebody smells like they're nervous, and so the
Yeah.
we may not consciously think of that, but that's where again the smell of like when you have to like do something like perform on stage or something, that type of nervous anticipation, it's the same type of nervous anticipation that people get when they're about to like do something bad. So those two things are basically indistinguishable to our body. But when somebody's nervous, like say we're in a bank and you start smelling something weird, and like nobody's like actively doing anything, but you smell something weird, and then suddenly you start noticing somebody looking nervous, you're gonna start like thinking about it more. And so that's where I'm like, there's a difference between a nervous smell and a just worked out smell, to the point of like somebody who smells like they just came from a gym is not going to set off the same type of flags as somebody who is dressed normally but is smelling nervous. Even and this is where again so much of our memory is allocated to or attached to smell or associated with smell. I think that's why it's like a sense you don't have to see. If you need to be reminded of something, the smell will remind you of it.
Oh
And
yeah.
it will remind you exactly what you need to be reminded of. And it'll put you exactly in that spot. So that's where I'm like, knowing that of all the senses, sight and smell are basically the most associated with memory, with smell being the strongest in that it stays associated with memories the longest, most accurately of any part. So that's where like if you have a memory of eating breakfast at IHOP or Perkins or something, you'll be able to remember the taste of what you had, but you'll probably not necessarily be able to remember the color of the shirt that you wore or the color of everybody else's shirt. Like in that the taste is going to be and the smell are going to have just stronger associations with long-term memory storage, so it's going to be less
Man,
likely that those memories degrade.
maybe that's why like my memories of raves all bled into one long party.
But that's why also like the raver funk smell is so ingrained. Like if somebody says raver funk,
You know what
it
it
like
is.
it makes your olfactory tingle. You know exactly the smell, and it's such a specific smell and such a strong thing where like if you if you smell it, you're like, oh, this person's been partying for 48 hours. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, you can just instantly tell this person has been partying hard and it's on their skin or it's coming out of their skin or a combination of both. And that's where they don't even have to do the drugs. The drug smell it is on them. The tobacco smell is on them. The sweat picks it up and absorbs all of it.
Yeah.
And then it's like
The sweat of hundreds
this,
of people have mingled together in the atmosphere of a room and then deposited itself onto everyone's hair.
yeah.
I remember one of my friends used to call it. They described it as ravies, as the thing that was spread at raves, and it always like resulted in like it was like the result of a combination of the black gunk from smoke machines and or fog machines and people smoking indoors in completely unventilated spaces and all the stuff that happens at a rave. But that was like the stuff that contributed to feeling like crap the next day. Plus, high levels of physical activity sustained for hours. I'm pretty sure that that stuff is like all that all contributes to it. Has to.
Well, and there I think there are people who use those environments to justify acting without inhibitions and indulging all the riskiest behaviors. And everybody's not there for those things. And so I think there's multiple experiences that are had under the same roof. And I would hear stories of like people getting like hand jobs on the dance floor. And I'm like, I don't even know how that's possible, let alone what possesses somebody to like get a hand job from a stranger on a dance floor where I'm like, when they did it, you can tell that they were enjoying it in the sense of they thought it was cool and they thought it was like the hip thing to do. But then they're like, are these bumps? Do these bumps look like syphilis? And it's like
Oh,
eventually, eventually that shit catches up with them. Where you're like, you can't be getting hand jobs from strangers in fucking grubby clubs and not expecting to get some bumps with that. Because again, like the there were certain people where you'd hear shit where they're like in the bathroom stalls or on the dance floor doing all this crazy stuff, and you're like, where it it seems made up, and it seems like they're making this shit up until they like get the bumps to prove it. And it's like those stories only lead to bumps though. So that's where I don't know. I feel like we got raised in the era where people were learning about consequences for their actions, and it was all of the sexually explorative generations before us didn't really have any consequences for their actions that they publicly acknowledged. Then fucking AIDS came around and just started killing people, and then they had to deal with it. And I think we came at the early stages of AIDS being public. Not to say like it was around, but it wasn't really talked about publicly until Ryan White and Magic Johnson. So I think there were people in our generation that just didn't quite understand like shit can get serious really quick, even from a fucking hand job in a way where it's like, it's not gonna, you can't get AIDS from a hand job, but you can get fucking MRSA or you can get like crabs. You can get a bunch of stuff from
there's an
casual
entire list.
encounters.
There's an entire list of dermally transmissible
Right,
infections.
exactly.
Like,
Yes. I mean, and if anything, the fact that it's not the sexually transmitted diseases normally that you can get from like just casual dermatological encounters is like people that shouldn't give people a pause. But again, I think there was a whole segment of our generation that it just didn't quite click to them the gravity of and again it's not about like Puritan, abstinence only what but some people were just so over the line in a way where I'm like
so
I don't even
it's
understand the impetus for all
apparently
that.
okay. According to Google's search labs, their AI overview says it's not possible to provide an exact number of dermally transmissible infections, but they've got it categorized under bacterial, viral, fungal, or parasitic.
Oof. Oh God. Jesus. Oh God.
Like, I mean, obviously, it just gets worse because bacteria, we can kind of fight that. Viruses, we can kind of fight that, sort of. Maybe funguses are real hard to fight, and parasites are one of those things that are like fighting them is almost as dangerous as is it to the parasite as it is the host. Those things can all be transmitted dermally. Ugh. Ah.
Well, and then there was so much misinformation that people were like, "Oh, you can get AIDS from holding hands and shit." Like the misinformation goes all over the board in all the directions in such a way that seeing where we are now is no surprise. But I think the kids are actually like they're operating in this like meta layer where if you look at a lot of the comments on YouTube, it's kids pretending to be approving of things that they're making fun of by pretending to approve. And it's the funniest. I don't think adults are prepared to actually handle how smart the kids are and how willing the kids are to let themselves be thought to be dumb to play along with the joke that the adults aren't getting. Like, have you heard of Matan Evan?
I have not.
Okay. I don't know how old he is now. He must be like 19 or 20 by now. But basically, this
He's
kid,
18.
he's 18. I okay, he's got to be 18 or 19. Regardless, he first came on the scene. He basically trolled his way into the video game awards and got on stage and was like thanking his reformed rabbi Bill Clinton for for and it was like it was nobody knew what the fuck was happening, and this is how he basically made a name for himself by doing that. And then he starts trolling people um just full time, and a lot of older comedians didn't understand what was happening, and so they would started going on his show and he would troll them, and they would like try to troll him back thinking that like, oh, I'm a grown man, this kid isn't going to get one over on me. But he's just so much smarter and wittier than they expect, that their guards are not where they need to be. And I don't know why these grown ass adults go on his show unless their managers just hate them and set them up. I can't decide if their managers just hate them and set them up, or if they really think in their big ass egos that they're gonna go on and like put this kid in his place, because that never fucking happens. It never happens in a way.
I think that it's less of the former and almost entirely the latter.
I think you're right, and like I think the only one where it was actually the former may have been Andy Dick, which the whole episode ended up, it was all cringe, but it was one of those things where I'm like, I feel like Matan just saved Andy Dick's life from this fucking exploitive ass manager. And Matan kicked the manager out because they were filming a documentary for Andy Dick, and they brought the film crew in, and then Matan kicked them out and was like, "You just allow these people to exploit you like this? These people like give you drugs and he was like cutting Andy off from alcohol, and he was basically making Andy Dick his child and sonning Andy Dick as a grown man." And I don't know if you know anything about Andy Dick, but he's very unhinged, very unhinged to say the least. And he always will try to use being unhinged to make other people feel uncomfortable to then take control over the situation. Well, that wasn't happening. And watching a child basically take Andy Dick and reduce him to a sad shadow of a man that was he was never like an A-list celebrity, but at least he had something. I think there was a point where people would tolerate Andy Dick because he would make them money, and Andy Dick was always the same person. But he was put in his place by a child, and not by himself. He has his friends on set. So I think that's also where like people come on the show and they think it's just gonna be them versus Matan, but he's got like three or four other people on set that always they're like set pieces that will activate at any second. Like there's this one guy who just doesn't say anything and sits there and stares at the fucking guest and just is like he's real awkward and he just makes weird faces and is when the guest turns their back, he'll like start messing around behind their back and shit. But he's like always there. He'll with Andy
Oh,
Dick,
he's a
he
prop.
was he was between Andy Dick's legs for like 20 minutes before Andy Dick even noticed he was there. And then it scared the absolute shit out of him where you knew it was real, where it was like this dude committed to this bit and he's like underneath the chair, underneath Andy Dick, and just he commits. And like you don't know he's there until like Andy Dick like freaks the fuck out. And then you go back and you got to look and you're like, was he there the whole time? This motherfucker was there the whole time. So it's like seeing, seeing this happen with these people who used to be called comedians that are now killing comedy. A lot of them in the Rogan sphere.
Very,
They
very,
are
very few comedians have like an unlimited shelf life.
no,
In
not
fact,
at
it's like
all, not at all.
it's almost always the opposite. Most comedians have a very short shelf life and have almost zero replay value because the comedy is so intrinsically tied to cultural events that it becomes dated the moment that it's been performed. Like old bits always sound old because they're referencing something that happened so long ago that most people don't even know what they're about. Which is why it's really surreal to see like George Carlin routines and hear that stuff. And I think that he was less of a comedian. People just laughed at what he was talking about because they thought it was a comedy show. But a lot of that stuff is almost like a stern warning, like, "Hey guys, this is fucked up shit," and then the audience laughs about it. Our culture
Yeah,
is
and
eroding at the foundation. Oh God, he's so funny.
well, there's a couple things happening there. I think you're spot on. He was never really a comedian.
Oh,
He was always like um the
satirist,
canary.
a
Well,
cynic.
it was sardonicism,
Yes, that's the word
all
I
of
was
those
looking for.
things.
Sardonic.
But it was a canary in the coal mine. But the laughter is the nervous laughter that we all do when somebody says some fucked up shit and we're like, oh, that was fucked up. And we don't know how to react. So we just laugh.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that was what happened with George Carlin. And it's like, you look at him and Robin Williams was definitely more of a comedian, but he drifted into that shit too. And so I think a lot of people that call themselves comedians try to do that, but they end up just old man yelling at cloud on stage. And it's like, especially Joe Rogan. And
Yeah.
then all of them now are like, what's this cancel culture? You can't say anything anymore. And the whole fucking first 5 minutes is about how they can't say anything anymore. But we have to fucking hear it for some reason. Like if they can't talk, I don't know why we have to keep hearing this same goddamn bit about not being able to talk anymore. But not now, you can't say anything anymore. You couldn't do that today. You couldn't do the thing that somebody did in 2008 or
That's
2013.
That's like the most heavily abused routine now. Then is the you can't say these jokes anymore. I'm going to complain about it. I don't even know what those jokes are that they're talking about. I mean, I'm assuming they were funny at one point, but obviously things have changed. You know, if the youth of today are ridiculing through support,
Well, and that's where the like you're saying, the humor changes and it evolves, and the youth are on some meta shit, but those people, I don't know if they were ever funny.
I don't think they were.
Because that's where I'm like, Matan is fucking hilarious. Like,
But is he being funny, or is like he just like revealing, the absurdity that his, I guess, his guests have put themselves in, like the absurd
I mean,
positions.
it's both. It's both in that he's mocking the culture because he can be funny on his own.
Yeah.
In that when he does his advertisements for the like, he's got some sponsor. He like makes fun of the manosphere. He's like, you take this deodorant and you can put it all over your body, or you can fucking shave your balls or whatever you want, you know. And he like makes a mockery of it while he's actually doing it. So on the one hand, it's like I don't know why anybody would ever want this person to advertise their product, but they don't know why they want it to advertise because they don't understand why people are watching him. But because of that culture, that's why he's funny, because he turns around and mocks his fucking people who's advertising him or advertising through him. And so it's I think there's this notion of if you're getting made fun of, it's attention. So it's good if you can laugh along with it. And so you have these comedians who encourage this like roast culture, but then when you roast them, they can't fucking take it. And then they get the videos taken down, and then they'll have, cease and desist. But then they'll try to take it head on and go on Matan's show and then fucking fail. It's like the equivalent of a battle rapper going into a battle and just getting decimated. And so I think that's where seeing Matan do this to grown men who call themselves comedians to basically get the license to become political pundits that weren't funny and then use harassment and mockery like as a means of dog whistling against groups, but then turn around and be like, it's just jokes.
Yeah.
And then that's I've seen what they're doing. This is why Joe Rogan is now basically a right wing grifter, because he did that
Doesn't the
too
right wing
much.
doesn't want him either, right? Something fucked
Right,
up.
not anymore.
Yeah. You just reminded me actually of I went to see Black Eyed Peas at the IU Auditorium one point in my life, and um, they were opening up for Wyclef, and
This is pre or post Fergie.
it was pre Fergie because they actually had a band on stage. And I went to see the opening act. It was De La Soul and Black Eyed Peas because I knew who they were, and Wyclef was all over the radio, and so I really didn't have very much interest in that because it was like I just wasn't into radio friendly hip hop at that time. Um, but Wyclef comes on stage, and they invited one of Bloomington's infamous battle rappers, and this guy comes on stage and he just starts with insults, and he kind of blew his wad like right out the gate. And then Wyclef comes on and just raps about something. He's just telling a story, and he was so good at telling a story that like I forgot that there was even a beat going on in the background because he was just telling a story. And it was this kind of strange moment where like here we are seeing one of Bloomington's renowned battle rappers who is now just being reduced to a you know petty insults and just the weakest. That era where everyone kept saying off the top of the dome. Well, I was part of that era too, and it was just sad.
Well, okay,
And,
to
that,
be
and that's
fair,
and that's
that's
like
when people were at least coming off the top of the
that's
dome. And
true. It's
this
true.
I definition of freestyle evolved and changed so much in my life now. People are like calling pre-written rhymes freestyles. Where I'm like, what the?
Yeah,
That's not a freestyle.
I stopped paying
Can't.
attention to like King of the Dot when they were allowed to have their notebooks on stage with them. It was like this
Boo.
is, and it was before
Boo.
Drake got into it too, which is even
Mm,
weirder. Like that's not
yeah.
right.
No, that's not right at all.
I remember
No.
I remember I was at a New Year's party in Chicago and I met Arsenal. And this dude is like a intense battle rapper, very cool dude. No notebooks because he had incredible memory. And I remember watching him. He got on like that Eminem battle rapper. Uh, Now I can't remember what they're called. Reality TV show, and he didn't make it all the way through. And it was one of those things where it's like I've been watching King of the Dot for a while at that point, and some of the guys on that the Eminem rap show is like they were recycling things that I've heard them use in big time rap battle, and it was just kind of disappointing. It's like this is like just one step beyond like this quality of perfection that they were all aiming for. Now it has to be edited and multiple revisions so that when comes time for the performance, it's just a performance. Hardcore flowetry, but not even as good as the stuff that was happening on like Def Jam. Stuff on Def Jam that was like you know, gold standard level flowetry though. So actually, I think slam poetry is probably the most hardcore version of rap battling that I've ever heard. Like really good slam poetry, not just the angry person with a microphone.
Right. They do. They are. There's a crossover point right there
Yeah.
for sure. And I think part of that is like a lot of rap battles don't follow a beat,
No.
which is funny.
They're
It's
basically
like,
reciting
man,
sonatas at each other.
uh,
Here's this
it's like,
soliloquy I just came up with. It's intense, guys. You might want to sit down.
yeah.
Like, wait, what?
But the ones without the beat are usually the ones that get most heated too.
Yeah.
Um, man, I feel like the only time where I've actually been close to somebody getting stabbed is in a rap battle, and it was a rap battle with no beat, and that's where again it shit gets it gets too personal when there's no
Yeah.
beat.
It eventually devolves into two people yelling at each other,
uh,
and
I mean, and you don't want them to know any shit about each other
yeah.
because then that shit's gonna come out in the battle. And God forbid they know some actual dirt. Yeah,
Maybe it's a
because
good thing that that kind of microcosm is slowly consuming itself.
I mean, it had a shelf life.
Yeah,
You know, I
they
think
all have shelf lives. Everything does.
um, it's funny. There's a few Bloomington battle rappers that I could think of, um, but I think the one who had the most versatile skill beyond just battle rap went to Atlanta. Um, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about.
No, I can't think of anybody right now.
Okay, it's not the same one. Okay, it's Sunny Bamboo because that's where if I was not trying to call out anybody for that story earlier because I know if it is who I think it is, I think I know who you're talking about,
No, it
but it
was
was
not
not
Sunny
Sunny Bamboo.
Bamboo. It was not Sunny
Um,
Bamboo, and I'm not going to say their name because
yeah,
there's no need. Anybody who was
right. That's
there,
why.
they knew.
Yeah, but
The random listener on YouTube who comes across this and like just happened to have been at that show who knows what I'm talking about. They'll be like, man, that guy was right.
yeah,
That's such a narrow intersection right there.
right. Because I mean, they don't need shit talked about a show they did 30 years ago or
Yeah.
whatever. Like
25,
20.
yeah, like 25 years ago. No, but and it
It
doesn't.
wasn't that
It
bad. It
wasn't
wasn't.
that bad. They were good enough to get on stage with Wyclef, and he gave him a glimpse of what a seasoned professional like touring rapper can do, like very seasoned professional. And that's not to say that the person that got up on there wasn't good at what they did. They were probably fine, but it's seasoned professional versus up and comer. That's like we know how that's going to end. Very rarely is it like, Ralph Macchio versus Steve Vai in front of the devil at the crossroads. That's like not the standard. That's like the opposite of the standard. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes we're given a glimpse at that kind of creativity, and then those people are generally rewarded for it because like creative people. Creative people make the world a better place. I know that there's a like with all the dismantle the education department DOE. Like there's a lot of concern that like we're gonna lose arts and music and theater in public education, and I think that that's a genuine concern because some people, myself included, value the arts despite not consuming. I don't go to theater, but I know that it's important. I love art. I don't hang out in museums. I listen to music all the time though, so I value these things, whether I consume them or not. But I think
I
that
think
there,
we'll be fine without musicals.
I think we'll be fine without musicals. I think we've got plenty of musicals.
Saying if anything goes away and it's musicals, I think I'm okay with that. Art needs to be protected, but
Yeah,
musicals, we can let them die. I'm just me personally.
choirs should be able to perform their music without having to do additional dance routines. And if they want to do a dance routine, that's fine, I guess. I don't know. I guess I don't have a problem with them. I just don't consume that kind of content. I just rewatched the second season of Star Trek what is it, Strange New Worlds. And like the second to last episode is a musical.
I was just thinking about how I skipped that
I
episode.
totally skipped that
That's
episode.
this is where I'm like, I feel like musicals don't understand music or the medium in which they operate, whether it's on stage or television. It's like they they fundamentally are obtuse media, and that's where I do have a problem with them in general, just because it feels like music abuse. It feels like when they don't have an actual plot, well, we'll just fill it with a song and stretch out these words. Like, man, no, no, right, right. I came here for plot. I did not come here for fucking music.
I guess I'm casting a very very broad net when I'm including opera in musical. But that's like purpose composed.
Opera sucks too.
It
Have you
does.
ever been to an
Yeah,
opera?
I have.
Opera fucking sucks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for anybody who's pretentious and wants to pretend opera doesn't suck. Opera fucking sucks. I suffered through one opera that was one too many. God, opera sucks. Sorry. I
Yeah.
really feel it was in France too. In the home of the opera, I guess Italy, but France has France has a lot of opera like houses where they've been doing it for hundreds of
Oh, I
years there
think I think
too.
France played host to the entirety of like the cosmopolitan, the Neapolitan, and the Venetian opera scenes as they emerged and declined over the years. And
Fuck all of them. Fuck all of them. Opera sucks too. Yes. Again, people want to pretend I'm uncultured. They can be wrong.
Yeah, no. Opera's weird. I think it's one of those things that when uh, when done right, it can be pretty interesting. When it's like actually
But have,
featuring a singer and the music and like the orchestra behind it is just well rehearsed and everything comes together. At that point, though, I'm not actually watching the weird pseudo ballet performance, and I'm not really looking at the costumes. I'm just listening to it.
I mean, a lot of them are not with music with instrumental accompaniment, and they're just the
Yeah,
singers,
yeah.
which again, that shit is terrible. Even with the instruments, it's terrible, but it's because they're not mic'd and they have to sing loud and they have to sing power. It's just not good. It's not good. It's technically good, but as something to sit and listen to for like more than like 5 minutes, it's just, man, I cannot believe
Oh no
it
no no
does.
yeah.
Like that's not for us.
I'm not
That's
going to
like
pretend
for
that I sit down.
300 years
I don't
ago.
consume opera, but I definitely think that there's a place for that course of study within a conservatory. Like it's important that
In
people
the
that
past.
no. Well, no, those techniques need to be preserved.
Do
Um,
they? Do
yeah,
they
they
though? I
should.
don't know. I don't know if they should. I don't know. And that's where I'm like, I'm dead serious. I don't know. There's certain things where it's like, this is obviously a whole nother conversation, but it's like, if those are things that we have to create a whole conservatory space for because they're not jiving with like real use, we're not, like, the only time people use those things are in like car commercials. It's like, do they really need to be preserved? Like, really? In practice, I mean, I think again, it's a debate for sure, but that's where I'm like, I don't know where I actually stand on that. After a lot of bad art, some things need to die.
No, I definitely agree that there are a lot of formats, not formats. Not even sure what to call them. Like there are like entire subgenres of heavy metal probably don't deserve to exist, but there are a bunch of racists out there who love it, and so they're going to keep making it. Um, and then there's that whole era of country music that was just stealing from black musicians. That stuff needs to be. Fuck. I see. There's a part of me that feels like that. Even that stuff needs to be preserved so that we can point back. It's like, oh yeah, that's precisely when it was happening.
I mean, that's one thing, but does anybody new need to learn it? Is my point. Like, do we need new tear in the beer racist country singers hot off the presses making new albums? I don't necessarily think we do, but maybe there's somebody out there who is like, the old Hank Williams or whatever ain't good enough. I need some new crappy music.
This racism isn't modern enough.
Ted Nugent's too old.
He sounds like my uncle. I need somebody younger. As horrible as it is, man, he has one song called Stranglehold, and it's like I think it's his only good performance. It's like his most blistering guitar performance that I've heard.
Who's this?
Ted Nugent.
Oh,
I'm not suggesting you go out and listen to it. It's not. It's the kind of thing that I listened to when I was in high school, when I was trying to listen to every guitar player that was in every guitar magazine that I could get my hands on. And it was the one good song. He did no words. It's like an instrumental guitar solo. And by today's standards, it's like not even a C minus. Like compare that to modern guitar expression, and it's like the most not even intermediate level guitar work. But at the time, that was like incendiary. And I think it's important that some things like that are retained because we need to know how far we've come, and we need like one of the guys, Tim Henson, the guitar player from Polyphia. He's incredible. he coined this term called boomer bends to describe the sound of Hendrix era guitar playing. Hendrix all the way up until like we get into modern technical guitar technique or styles. And on some level, he's very accurate. Like that, there's a whole like idiosyncratic technical language vocabulary that comes directly out of the school of I've been studying Hendrix my whole life, and you can just hear it like in the way someone plays, and it's just all over the music. And then and more interestingly, like you can actually hear it in musicians that are not steeped in Hendrix because they don't do those things. And that's actually I think that's actually where we are now. I like in modern music, I hear less Jimi Hendrix than I hear like I don't know Rush of all things or Yes, or even more modern, like bands like Dream Theater that sound nothing, and I mean like absolutely nothing like the past. I can't think of one. I can't think of anything Dream Theater's made that sounded like it came out of the previous incarnation of rock and roll. And I think that that's actually like one of those things. Just like you're talking about. There's a new version of music that's being made by younger people, and they have different ideas about what is and what isn't, and what should be retained and what's just useless. Like even the neo soul that's coming out nowadays, it's like light years beyond what was being made when we were in high school. I mean, musically, like the lyrical content really hasn't changed that much.
No, and on that note, I think it's more and more difficult for people to make memorable music, and I don't know if that's because the lexicon of the sound has changed or if they are just not as capable or focused on making memorable riffs,
Yeah,
because that's where I'm like, um
I think there's a
I
lot of pressure to show that one can stand out, and so it becomes more performative and less compositional.
that's true, but even then it's like I heard a Skrillex track today in a
Oh, is
soundtrack.
his new? Is it from his new stuff?
No, it was from 2022, but it got used in a soundtrack for Ironheart. I just heard it in 2025, but I couldn't. I know I liked it and I know it was good, but I couldn't tell you the fucking melody if my life depended on it. Where like P Funk, Bootsy Collins bass lines,
You can sing them.
you memorize them almost
Yeah.
immediately. Like, Jimi Hendrix riffs is super easy to like memorize that shit or beat it. Like anybody between the 40s and like late 90s, their music was easily memorized, not not because it was simple, but because the riffs were
Well, I mean, Charlie
easy.
Parker's music wasn't like that stuff's complicated, but his melodies could be. You could sing them. You could hum along.
Right. I mean, you can hum along, but it's more so can how quick can you memorize somebody's track? Like if you hear somebody's song once, are you walking away singing it? There's like the capacity to be able to do that no Polyphia track will ever do
Oh
that.
yeah, no, no. Like as a perfect example, the first time I heard Charlie Parker song "Donna Lee," I couldn't get it out of my head, and I just listened to three Polyphia tracks today, and I know one of them has some really impressive bass performance on it, but all the guitar work is incendiary. And on one of those tracks, Steve Vai does his Steve Vai thing, which is always awesome. But I couldn't reproduce any of the melodies in any of those songs. Like not one. In fact, I can't even think of any of those songs that have melodies. They're just highly performative guitar solos. And like Hendrix's stuff is very, you can, it's all of his music sounded unique. Like each of his songs sounded almost a little different from each other. Whereas a lot of like modern music, I can tell because I study scales and arpeggiation and chords, and I constantly look at this stuff and listen to it, and so I can follow it, and I have an idea of what's going on. But that requires like regular study to be able to hear those things, to become able to hear those things and reliably retain that kind of information. And it's not easy to learn songs. Like a lot of songs are complicated as hell. Like some of them have not just like time signature changes, but meter changes, and then big modulations to like completely unrelated keys. I actually think that's the reason I liked Bro Steps so much, or as much as I did, is because like harmonically, it was much more complex than just dubstep or drum and bass even, because they would change keys like 3 or 4 times just in a song, and they were using like chord changes like that were just way beyond the standard of complexity for most electronic music. I really enjoyed that, except it was so grating and gnashing sounding, like just metal teeth grinding against each other, that I can only listen to that kind of stuff for a few minutes. Just like Skrillex, his Grammy album, like there are a bunch of tracks in there that the impact is so incredible, and if you're in front of the right sound system, it's a truly visceral experience. But I know there's a melody at the end of Nice Sprites, but I can't remember what it is. Actually, the only electronic music melodies that I can actively recall right now are Sandstorm and Zombie Nation, and one of them is just kind of like a clave rhythm repeated over and over again, and then the other one is just a rip off of a like a Commodore game. I think that's actually the biggest problem with music right now is that none of it's memorable.
Like none.
Like absolutely none. It's funny. I remember reading about how the the path for uh, uh, most cultural adoption of a music form results in a slow decline of complexity. So to the point that at the end, when at the when that genre's movement is over, when there's no more energy left, it's just simplified and all the music sounds the same. They're all sharing the same chord changes. Almost everything's in the same key. It's almost all the same tempo. The lyrics are almost all reduced down to child level complexity. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we are with a lot of older stuff. Like country music for years has had suffered from the all the songs sound the same. Rock and roll was the same way. It was all canned heat. There was no heat. It was just canned. And I think the only genres that have managed to retain any kind of complexity have been jazz and hip hop. Like rap music itself has become, in a lot of ways, more complex and harder to listen to. Um, and not even to pick on any specific genre, like just overall, like it seems that like rap and hip hop has, in a lot of ways, absorbed a lot more jazz than consuming pop culture over the last decade. And I like that, and I like when I hear like creative use of synthesizers. So I think that's kind of cool. But at the same time, I can't listen to the rappers because I don't, I just don't relate to what they're talking about, and that's the weird part. That probably just means I'm sitting from some like, vantage point that has me isolated from that portion of culture. And obviously, I'm I'm not interested in going out to clubs anymore. I'd be hard pressed to go to an actual like music event. Actually Sheila asked me about that. She said something about festivals, and I said the only festival that I'd be interested in anymore is going to Movement in Detroit because it's downtown, and in the past I've just gotten a hotel within walking distance, and I didn't need to go to after hours or after parties because the, hanging out at the plaza all day was that's taxing, and I just don't need to stay up all night anymore. Like the last two times I went, I didn't go to after hours or the after parties, and I had a great time. And it didn't involve sleeping in a tent in the middle of the stagnant, windless air movement woods, like an electric forest, where you have to sit there with everyone else's camping funk, and it's not like hanging out in a freaking parking lot like all the EDCs. You can just leave anytime you. That's the best part about Detroit Electronic Music Festival was at any time you could just leave and go back to the hotel or go find some place to sit down and eat something indoors. I think I'd like to go to Ultra because they seem to have like the most incredible drum and bass stage every year. But that's also like 18 plus hours away. Actually, I don't know. It's probably like 25 hours away from here versus the 6 hours to Detroit. And also, Detroit is the home of, Detroit techno. And I can't think of anything that has come out of Florida other than like, you know, Florida Man and Regret.
Miami bass. I mean,
Miami, okay. Yeah, but yeah,
my 808 is really like
that stuff is cool,
Miami.
but you gotta have enough sound system for that stuff to really sound good though.
Right, but even then, that's what I'm saying. Like Miami clubs were doing bass in the clubs, and people were putting subwoofers in their cars in the '90s.
Yeah,
Um, I think bass definitely migrated from the south upward, and not like north was definitely not using 808s, and
no,
West Coast barely was using 808s.
now the West Coast seem to be using real drum kit sounds.
Yeah.
I think the East Coast liked real drum kit sounds for a long time too, but the whole South Coast sound is different. They embraced synthesizers. Like Little John's music, that stuff is crazy hype.
Well, and East Coast didn't even use drum kits; they just used samples, like
Yeah, yeah,
full on samples.
samples of drum kits.
Yeah, I mean, not drum. Like, I guess technically, it's like a drummer because in terms of when you got the sample packs, the drum kits are broken up by piece, whereas then
And some have loops too.
they right, but these are they generally slice their own loops, and it's
Yeah.
like a full loop.
I always thought that whole like MPC style of sample manipulation was really cool. Like setting the sample playback start and end points, and then like selecting like the way that the that loop itself would behave. It was all very granular. And then the performance style, like that whole like MPC style of finger drumming, but it's more than that because they're also sometimes playing like triggering like actual music. I always thought that was like some of the most incredible stuff to actually see. But nowadays, when I see that kind of performance, it's almost always like it's like a quest to approach turntablism's level of on the fly creativity, but without the turntables. Like I remember watching a finger drummer and Jam Master Jay, and it was cool, like because they were basically doing the same thing, and it was one of those moments where it's like, yeah, vinyl, digital, it doesn't matter if the beat's good, if the groove's just rocking real hard, if you can feel it, it's there. It doesn't matter. I'm actually glad that that whole argument seems to have like calmed down. I don't read about it nearly as much as I used to. But maybe that's a reflection of the culture itself having less access to vinyl and just unlimited access to streaming services that they can integrate into their DJ systems.